On the eve of my wedding, my fiancé, whom I had loved for many years, cheated on me. The beautiful mistress threw the pregnancy test report on my desk and said, "Auntie, we really love each other." On the little girl's casually raised ring finger, a diamond ring as bright as stars was firmly worn on her hand. That diamond ring should have belonged to me. My head was buzzing. I remember when I was 18, one evening after self-study class, Nathan, the school bully, casually hit me on the head with a piece of white paper. "Hey idiot, this is for you." I took out my moral education book with a blank expression and wrote, "On X month X day, Nathan threatened the class monitor and littered everywhere, so 3 points will be deducted." He said angrily, "Didn't you hear the rumors? This school bully has had a crush on you for 3 years." The paper ball slowly unfolded, revealing a diamond ring he designed himself. 1. Class reunion. Nathan made a sweet appearance with his lover, and the whole audience was excited, and some even made way for him. And at the end of this road is me. As the only woman who had been confessed to by the school bully C, and who had been in a relationship with him for 8 years, my little lover looked at me with eyes full of lust. "Sister Emily, long time no see." Carol frowned. "I thought you would avoid coming." I sneered. "I am attending my own classmate party, and you are the one to avoid suspicion." My best friend next to me was sarcastically complaining about me, and the girl's eyes turned red with anger on the spot. The originally good atmosphere suddenly became eerily quiet. Nathan's face was dull, his hand casually placed on Carol's waist. There seemed to be a vortex in his calm black eyes, and his tone was obviously unhappy. "Get her out. This is one of the hotels under his group." I offended his woman, and as everyone knows, he always protects her. An old classmate advised, "Nathan, we can't be a couple, but we are still classmates." "In love? Kill them all." In the chaos, I walked up to the man and said coldly, "Nathan, let's break up today." The man smiled and said, "Okay." After 8 years of dating, the thing Nathan hates most is me breaking up with him, and he won't listen when we're arguing. But now that the mistress has shown up, he's been particularly forthcoming. Before leaving, the couple snuggled up to each other, which made me feel like I was missing some sense of ritual in breaking up. So I turned around and slapped him on his handsome face with sharp edges. Nathan looked at me coldly, and everyone was shocked. I once slapped the bully in the face of C-School, and the whole school talked about it for half a semester. In order to save face, Nathan threatened me fiercely in private. "Since this hand has hit me, you can't use it to hit others, including Everett," I said calmly at the time. "You are sick, how could I bear to hit him?" I liked Everett at that time. Nathan immediately fell into self-doubt, to the point that when the younger brother next to him praised him for being handsome and charming, he was beaten up and he thought the younger brother was laughing at him. Otherwise, why did I like Everett at that time instead of the handsome and charming him? A story that begins with a slap in the face should be celebrated by ending it with a slap in the face. Nathan's face was filled with disbelief and a red slap mark appeared on it. Carol frowned and stroked his face. "Uncle, does it hurt? I'll give you some ice." He said nothing and just smiled. Smelling the sour odor of love, I turned around, picked up my bag and left. On my way out, I happened to see a trash can and I vomited all over the place. The plot of the uncle falling in love with his adopted daughter is so disgusting. My best friend patted me on the back and said, "I told you 8 years ago that he was unreliable, but you didn't believe me." I burst into tears. "Don't say it, I regret it." My best friend sighed. "It's not worth it, I'll find a little puppy another day." I wiped my mouth and said, "I mean, if I had known I would vomit, I would not have eaten those 2 big lobsters just now." She, too. The next day, Carol showed up in my office in great spirits. She took out a test report from her bag and said, "I'm pregnant. If you're pregnant, go find your dad." I was too lazy to argue with her. "You're not angry?" She froze. "You've monopolized him for so many years, I don't want you to have any illusions." She raised her hand and stroked her curly hair. On her ring finger was the diamond ring that Nathan had designed for me. It cost tens of millions. In order to let me see the diamond ring, she stroked her bangs several times, and finally couldn't help but say the key point. "Some diamond rings, like people, will fit the owner perfectly even if the owner changes." I slowly raised my head from the computer and raised the corners of my lips. "I'll tell you a secret. Nathan is infertile. My ex-fiancé came from a privileged background and was a business genius. Others only know that he is decisive, calm, and self-controlled, and when it comes to interests, no one can be more ruthless than him. Only I know that he suffers from a serious disease called love brain. One time, I casually said that I didn't like children because they were too noisy and chaotic. A few days later, I found the medical record of my sterilization operation in his study. The woman who was kicking his stomach suddenly became frothy and said in a trembling voice, "Ah, this is impossible. Who will his inheritance be left to? Why don't I tell him you're pregnant for you?" I raised my phone. "Otherwise, get out of here." A spoiled child like Nathan would definitely not be able to tolerate the fact that he had just helped his lover to the top, only to have her cuckolded in the blink of an eye. Carol's expression changed instantly, and she apologized to me humbly. "Sister Emily, don't be angry, I'll get out of here right now." Once the office was completely quiet, losing Nathan had a huge impact on me. For example, the stock price of my small company has plummeted drastically. As soon as people heard that Nathan's heirs and I had broken up, they all turned against me and started betting on when my company would go bankrupt. In the afternoon, I put on some light makeup, attended a press conference, spent a lot of money, and contacted several media and TV reporters. I got this huge sum of money by auctioning off the precious collections Nathan gave me. He pursued me relentlessly back then, and I got impatient and blurted out, "You want to pursue me without giving me a garage and a bag, and without spending tens of millions? I hope he can open his eyes and give up pursuing a vulgar and materialistic woman like me." As a result, over the years he has been obsessed with accumulating money like a giant dragon in a deep cave, and has been madly testing Joe Bayopi's bottom line. In turn, he gave me a gift that was expensive and useless. "Emily, you don't like it? This is very expensive." I shook my head with a dark face. In the end, we were both turned into vulgar and materialistic. Because he was too stingy with other women, half of the beautiful women who took the initiative to get into his bed were gone, and he looked down on the remaining rich daughters who didn't care about money. I asked him, "They don't love money, they only love you, so they won't even accept your sincerity?" Nathan frowned and thought for a long time. How much is sincerity worth? I even suspect that this young man who was born with a silver key did not become mentally retarded due to brain hypoxia at birth, but God also took away some of his nerves. 3. I invited countless big-name reporters. Facing the camera, I portrayed myself as a female entrepreneur who had been hurt, cheated on, and cheated on. I smiled at the camera with tears in my eyes and emotionally recounted the details of the past 8 years. "We have been in love for 8 years, but it is a pity that we could not get married." Of course, I just made up the story. Before we knew it, this shocking melon became a hot topic, and after being removed countless times, it resurrected again, like the mud on the wall that cannot be wiped off. As more and more people saw this, many girls felt the same way and expressed their determination to boycott Nathan's products. The stock price fell rapidly. There has never been such a scandal since Nathan took over Nathan's. He has nothing to do with love affairs, and I am enough to bring him down. Finally, Nathan's calls came in one after another. I hung up on them one by one, and when his patience was about to run out, I pressed the answer button. "Hello, Mr. Nathan. Tell me, how much do you want?" The voice on the other end was cold and a little disdainful. "Besides, you have to show evidence when you do something. When will I show you my affection? As it happens, I have evidence." I curled my lips and said, "Nathan, you asked for this, don't say I'm insulting you. Since President Zhang has a bad memory and likes to blaspheme, I can only help him recall." I recommended him an emotional public account. One night, Nathan was typing furiously on the screen while I was asleep, even showing a happy expression. I gritted my teeth and snatched his phone, wanting to see what dirty talk his lover had said to make him smile so coquettishly. The result was a romance article on a mobile public account with over 100,000 readers. When he was reading the romance novel, it was as if he had caught a glimpse of another Nathan with a girlish heart. I cleared my throat awkwardly. It's normal to like reading romance novels. I like them too. So you don't have to hide under the covers in the middle of the night to watch it secretly. He pretended to be calm, snatched the phone and rubbed his temples. "I'm too tired from work, I need to relieve stress." I nodded. Apart from chasing me and working to make money, Nathan never wasted his time on such boring things. That romance novel had a fatal attraction to me like Pandora's box. Finally, on a dark and windy night, I secretly looked at his mobile phone. That's a sweet little article. The heroine in the story has obsessive-compulsive disorder. She only drinks 2/3 of the water in the cup and stops drinking the rest. The hero, on the other hand, will tacitly drink the remaining 1/3. It quite satisfies the girlish feelings, but I feel very embarrassed because I also have this strange habit. However, Nathan will not drink the remaining water in the cup. The more I watch, the more shocked I am. It seems like someone installed a micro camera in my life and then modified it to turn it into a novel. However, the male protagonist is even more of a bootlicker than Nathan. The burning sensation of being spied on made my back feel like thorns. I turned around and saw Nathan had woken up at some point. He looked at me with a sad look in his dark eyes. This is the public account I used to record my life. Nathan's Adam's apple moved slightly, and his unnatural look hid embarrassment, but his tone was threatening me. You are not allowed to look at it again in the future. I put down my phone silently to give him some face. But a comment from a reader in the comments section popped up in my mind. Are these posts the diaries of a devoted licker? And the author of the public account replied, yes, she loves me so much that she always leaves some water for me every time she drinks it. I rubbed my feet hard. Love brain is a serious disease and I have to take care of his condition. Nathan has a photographic memory for all these past events, so he will not forget them. I sent him the public account through WeChat so that he could read the dog-licking diary himself. Nathan was silent for a moment, and his tone was slightly surprised and cold. How did you get my WeChat? I sensed something was wrong. 8 years ago, you pestered me for this, don't you remember? That year, I met Everett on the narrow road at the entrance of the stairs. We smiled at each other, ignoring a young man waiting for me in the corner. Instead, he was thrown against the wall and asked sourly, didn't you hear the rumors? This school bully has a crush on you. He had a crush on me and everyone knew about it, but he asked all the students in the school not to reveal the secret. The whole school was terrified to keep my secret, and the eldest master accidentally told it out. I asked in fear, so? But he just took out his phone. I have a crush on you, it's not too much to ask for your WeChat, right? At that time, I stiffly wrote down the WeChat number. Being secretly loved is a beautiful little thing. Just like before evening self-study, Everett always liked to put his hands on the railing outside the classroom and greet me from a distance as I sat by the window in the opposite teaching building. If the person who had a crush on me was Nathan, I would just have to endure it. But 8 years later, he treated me like a traitor, even though I was his sweetheart just 3 months ago. I closed my eyes as I listened to the voice that was so familiar to me that it was engraved in my bones. Nathan, are you losing your memory? The other party sneered. My mind raced and I tried to ask, you don't have cancer, do you? There was a moment of silence. My heart skipped a beat. If he had cancer, it would be normal for him to pretend to be indifferent and not remember me in order not to make me sad. Even if I had to sell my small company, I would accompany him through his treatment. As a result, there was a busy tone on the other end of the phone. I vaguely heard him instruct his assistant. Check if Emily has a history of mental illness, and don't let her ask me weird questions again. Oh. Anger filled my heart. Nathan, even if I go bankrupt this time, I will kill you. He actually kept a mistress and even fell in love with someone else so quickly. The assistant answered the phone. Hello, Miss Emily. Mr. Nathan asked me to tell you that our company has no grudges against Miss Emily. There is no need to confront her. If Miss Emily is free, she can have a cup of coffee with Mr. Nathan and sit down to solve the problem. Before I hung up, I left a message. Let him come to see me in person. 3 months ago, Nathan went on a business trip to the United States. Before leaving, he said, remember to think of me, and don't mess around with other girls while I'm away. I was tying his tie in a daze, and was held down and kissed all over, which delayed me for a long time. The memory of his love for me remains on that day. For the next 3 months, I lost contact with him. My phone calls were unreachable, and he didn't reply to my WeChat messages. However, Nathan's family vaguely told me not to worry. I was the last person to know that Nathan had returned to China, but I still wanted to appear in front of him as if it were a surprise. It rained lightly that day. I was overjoyed to see that my fiancé, who had disappeared for 3 months, was standing in front of me without any missing arms or legs. But under his big gray windbreaker was a petite and pretty girl. My appearance made Carol shrink as if she was frightened. "Sister Emily, the rain is too heavy. Uncle just wants to shelter me from the rain." I almost laughed out loud when I saw that I had to hide in the arms of a man who was about to get married to protect the rain. This little girl was adopted by Nathan's family when she was 8 years old. Her grandfather was an entrepreneur who started his business from scratch with Nathan's grandfather. The old man's children died early, leaving behind a granddaughter. Grandpa Nathan remembered that he had a great-grandson who was very filial, so he handed the little girl to Nathan and said, "She will be on the same household registration as you from now on. Remember to treat Tion well." Carol always calls him Uncle. When Carol first met me, she was very awkward. "Uncle, who is this beautiful sister?" That day happened to be our high school graduation ceremony. Everyone in the school knew that Nathan was bringing a primary school student. The primary school student called him Uncle all the time, which made him gradually lose face. I took photos on the rooftop wearing my graduation uniform. Nathan looked disgusted and explained, "Hey, this little girl insisted on following me. I didn't bring her out to play. Don't be angry." I said meaningfully, "There's nothing to be angry about. It is quite normal to let primary school students attend graduation ceremonies as parents, since at least the family members are there." Nathan's parents never attended any of his events, including his 18th birthday. Nathan dragged me to a cruise ship to celebrate his birthday. I heard his parents coldly tell him on the phone, "Congratulations, you have reached the age of responsibility." That day, Nathan was sullen and silent. Perhaps out of sympathy, I cut off a piece of the big cake, put a candle on it, and held it in front of him. "Everett's birthday is tomorrow. Let's celebrate it for him today." His expressionless face finally showed a slight movement, and he gritted his teeth and said, "Emily, today is my birthday." I nodded. "Yes, if you don't want to live anymore, then we will help him live. I've been thinking about it a lot." The eldest young master's hypersexuality was cured without treatment. What's even more terrifying than Nathan's parents not being present at his coming-of-age ceremony is that he brought a cute little girl who called him uncle to his graduation ceremony. When I asked, I found out that it was another little girl whose parents had both passed away. I took her hand and said, "Sister will take you to eat." Carol hesitated, then nodded. I just turned around. The boy behind me had a faint blush on his cold white skin, but his tone was cold. "Did you see it? She loves me so much, and she also likes my family." The expressions on his younger brother's faces were so interesting that the corners of my mouth twitched slightly, and I prayed that the eldest master's illness could be alleviated. Maybe my steps were a beat too slow. Nathan came up to me with his long legs, lifted my waist, straightened my cheeks, and kissed me. "Don't love me so much." I was forced to look up, my fists clenched tightly. The culprit smiled and said, "I'll sit next to you in a while and I have something to tell you." When I heard that, I rolled my eyes. The little girl in his hand suddenly threw her arm away. "Sister, I don't want to eat anymore." 5. On the day of the graduation ceremony, Nathan had a sullen face and was seated next to the toilet door, as arranged by someone. The young master, who had to spray perfume even when going to the toilet, was naturally dissatisfied. The most important thing was that the toilet was the farthest from me. He probably doesn't know that the principal is my dad. I glanced at my neighbor vaguely. The boy next to me was wearing a white shirt and smelled like a scholar. He seemed to notice my gaze and handed me a cup of lemon tea. "Emily, do you want some?" Genius student Everett, the male god, is so close to me. My face is unnaturally hot, I nodded. "Thank you, it's a drink." Then he inserted 2 straws and politely smiled, asking me to drink first. I stared at the 2 straws. 1 cup. When our eyes met, he smiled softly. "I've been waiting in line for 2 hours. This is the last cup." The implication is that it is an act of helplessness. I picked up the milk tea without hesitation. "I hope you did it on purpose." Everett lowered his head slightly, smiled, and said nothing. I looked at his profile openly. His features were sharp and his fair jawline was particularly clear. His smile was sincere and touching. I like this kind of boy, and I like him without any concealment. Everett's elegant temperament permeates his bones. The first time I met him was at the opening ceremony. Thanks to Nathan. At the beginning of his freshman year, Nathan entered the school in a low-key manner, carrying a truckload of luggage and without even a bodyguard. He would ask passersby how to get to the dormitory. Unfortunately, that passerby was me. I confidently pointed in the opposite direction, but unfortunately pointed him to the downstairs of the girls' dormitory. Poor young Master Nathan was staying there for the first time and thought that boys and girls lived together. So when he broke into the girls' dormitory, he used his best looks to do the most rascally things and was immediately surrounded. But he was arrogant and had a head full of questions, but he didn't bother to ask anyone. Finally, he seemed to realize that men and women should not live together. When he pretended to be calm and dragged his luggage downstairs, he was blocked by a group of senior girls and teased. They forced him to take turns being their boyfriend. When he pretended to be calm and dragged his luggage downstairs, he was blocked by a group of senior girls and teased. They forced him to take turns being their boyfriend. Nathan refused and was beaten up. After the eldest master's calf was kicked numb, he angrily discovered that he had been bullied on campus on the first day of school. He simply gave up pretending and fought violence with violence, becoming a famous school bully. When he met me again at the opening ceremony, I was standing on the student representative podium, looking cute and well-behaved. His brows frowned. While I was using the restroom, a pair of hands grabbed my neck fiercely and dragged me into the boys' restroom. Nathan looked down at me with a cold expression and a sneer on his face. "You've ruined my life for the next 3 years." Originally, he planned to be the noble and cool son of genius, but accidentally became the school bully. I shivered. At that moment, I went through all the wrong things I had done in my life and realized I didn't know him, but I heard that there was a new bully who was so handsome that he broke into the girls' dormitory and beat up a dozen female classmates. The girls who were beaten were expelled from the school and transferred to other schools, but he was unharmed. To resolve this issue, more than a dozen luxury cars arrived at the door, and bodyguards and butlers blocked my father's principal's office. The person in front of me is so arrogant. He must be the legendary Nathan. "Let me go," I said without any apology. "You pervert." This is how everyone scolds him. The pervert who broke into the girls' dormitory. Nathan said to his brothers, "Think of the most vicious way to punish her." The younger brothers quickly offered a plan. "Take off your skirt. Strip naked. Take pictures. Can I wear her skirt if I steal it?" Nathan's eyebrows jumped and he met my frightened eyes. "Not vicious enough, change another one." At that moment, the younger brothers were suffocated and almost had "The boss seems to be a fool" written on their faces. I clutched the outstanding student's speech in my hand. In 15 minutes, the school would notice I was missing. This made him look at the manuscript again and again. "Is this thing important to you?" I nodded subconsciously. Then he viciously tore the manuscript into pieces and rushed into the toilet, messing up my carefully styled hair, and smiled with satisfaction. "Excellent student, it must be an honor to give a speech on stage." I returned to the podium with red eyes. I bumped into a thin and tall boy walking towards me. Everett noticed my red eyelids and asked, "What's wrong?" My speech was stolen. He looked surprised, glanced at my messy hair and handed me the speech. "Don't worry, use mine." That day, Everett was talking and laughing at the podium without a script. In just 30 minutes, I was completely captivated by the boy's calm demeanor. 6. The 3 words Everett made me blush and my heart beat fast just by looking at them when I was a student. He lent me his manuscript at the opening ceremony and handed me a cup of lemon tea at the graduation ceremony. I was drinking Everett's lemon tea. There was a commotion nearby. The boy sitting next to Everett was tugging at his shirt sleeves. "Everett, I've told you so many times. Pass this rose to Emily. The school bully brought it to you. Don't get beaten. Hurry up." The note of the rose is broken at Everett, but he never gives Nathan face. After a moment, a pair of bony hands snatched the lemon tea from my hand. Nathan appeared in front of me with a gloomy face and an overly sinister look. "Is it delicious?" My hands began to tremble and the atmosphere became inexplicably tense. "If you like it." Nathan took off his watch and said, "Everett, I bought your cup of tea. That's $1 million watch." When he is not wearing his school uniform, Nathan exudes nobility, even to the point where even the perfume on his body smells like money. This action caused quite a stir among the people around. Everett said with a hint of sarcasm, "Nathan, it's not the tea she likes, it's the tea that belongs to me." I almost choked to death on his saliva. Everett's mouth can be quite poisonous sometimes. 7. Nathan's face didn't look good. I pretended not to see it, took the lemon tea back and gulped down the rest. A hand slid towards my waist, making me feel cold. "Emily, you have to follow me wherever I sit today." I reluctantly pried his hands off my waist and asked, "Why?" As soon as he finished speaking, as if it was planned, the younger brothers started talking at once, covering for Nathan. "You have a crush on our boss. You smiled happily when the boss kissed you. And he invited his family to eat. You love him so much, you deserve to sit next to him." I opened my eyes wide and noticed that Nathan glanced at Everett deliberately, and Everett's brows, as dull as a landscape painting, wrinkled slightly. The crowd of onlookers around were all whispering like mosquitoes. "So they have kissed before? How exciting! And they always do this on the rooftop." My fists tightened silently again. Because Nathan's housekeeper built a library for the school, my father used to let me swallow my anger and pamper him on small matters. Finally, he graduated. I pulled out the phone and said, "Listen, Nathan, I don't like you." Nathan looked confused. "What do you mean?" The younger brothers hesitated to speak, fearing that they might say the wrong thing. "A long time. Disliking is almost the same as hating her." Everett's long eyebrows relaxed, and a smile flashed in his eyes. "She likes me, but of course you can't see it." Everett was a man of few words, and he had never been seen targeting anyone. The surroundings fell into a terrible silence. Young Master Nathan had never encountered such a situation where no one gave him a favorable reception. It exploded on the spot. "Emily." The veins on his cold forehead were faintly visible. "You said you liked me, but you were lying to me?" "Oh." I nodded darkly. "Yes, for money. My dad said that Nathan's family gave too much, and building a school was just right, so we should coax him as much as possible." Nathan pursed his lips and let out a soft chuckle from his throat, which sounded sarcastic and self-mocking. He never looked for me again after that. 8. 2 months later, when college started, I sent Everett to the airport with tears in my eyes. He was going to the best university in the country. Everett teased me. "Don't cry so ugly, wait for me to come back." Good. The announcement urging boarding rang in his ears. He hesitated for a second before smiling with a relaxed expression. "See you next time, Emily." During the machine inspection, Everett turned around and looked at me deeply, then disappeared in the moving crowd. At the airport entrance, I cried without caring about my image and madly expressed my emotions to my best friend. Long-distance relationships are painful, even though Everett has nothing to do with me. But he asked me to wait for him, which must be a hint that I am already his girlfriend. Well, it's really mind-boggling to be in love with a genius. This love has a kind of subtle and restrained beauty. Best friend. I was crying and laughing, and when I looked up from the phone screen, I was met with another pair of dark and calm eyes, cold and distant. In just 2 months, Nathan's exposed skin seemed to have not seen the light for a long time, and it was cold and pale, somewhat sickly. He had lost a lot of weight, but when the wind blew, a section of his strong waistline was faintly visible. Behind him were several bodyguards carrying suitcases in a hurry. The bodyguards urged him, "Young master, hurry up. The plane to Los Angeles is about to take off." Nathan passed by me without a second's delay, like a stranger. I stood there in a daze. He is the heir of the elite class. No longer the idiot Nathan who forcefully kissed me in school uniform and narcissistically said, "Don't love me that much." Fine. Everyone has his or her own position and each is different. His or her good or bad is as fleeting as fireworks. And all my beautiful fantasies about the future were given to a man named Everett. One afternoon when summer cicadas were noisy, I had a dream. I dreamed that Everett was hugging me in my wedding dress and told me, "Emily, I have liked you for a long time." But later the dream was shattered. Half a year later, Everett went abroad for an exchange program and never came back. I heard that he was shot and killed. That winter was very cold, and Everett's death was like a blanket of snow that left a white mark in my heart. The boy I fell in love with for the first time in my life died in the wilderness and never got to rest in peace. But the snow will melt and disappear. People mention this talented young man less and less frequently, including Everett's parents, whose sorrowful faces gradually returned to calm. The aftermath of this incident was that I became more and more free, learned to drink, and had a group of bad friends who liked to go to bars to drink on weekends. A bunch of people held me down to play games, and after losing 10 times in a row I drank 10 cups. I gritted my teeth in hatred. No, I can't drink anymore, I'll be punished. I thought that just kissing a puppy on the street was the ultimate challenge, but this group of people chose a more tricky angle. Emily, your punishment is… The man paused. Call the person who pursued you and tell him in a voice message, I'm so lonely, come and keep me company. This is not difficult. But at that moment, a string in my heart snapped. Change it, I said coldly. You can have fun, but you're going too far by asking me to be a scumbag. As a human being, what we fear most is to give others hope with all our heart, only to have it crushed in the end, only to then realize that it was just a game. Everyone was stunned. Forget it, keep it simple. It doesn't matter who you call. There's a note in your phone saying dear. Just call it. I can. Since you both marked it as dear, you must be familiar with me and call me Dad. The call was connected. I tried frantically. Where are you? How's the weather? As soon as it speaks, I know who it is. A long time. Paris, rainy night. A little hoarse and lazy, as if being woken up, or as if having a bad cold. I looked embarrassed. It was Nathan, the Nathan who wanted to cut me into pieces. But my friends made faces and said, clip sound. Clip sound. To end the punishment, I quickly said in a clipped voice, I'm so lonely, come and keep me company. Then it hung up with a snap. He is so busy and he is not a kid anymore, he may not even remember who I am. Why are you blushing? My friends looked at me in surprise. When your school hunk was chasing you down the street, you didn't even blush. I touched my face subconsciously. I've been drinking. 9. By the time the party was over, I was completely drunk. As soon as I stepped out of the door, I went from having a steady step to falling headfirst into the air the next second. Damn, what a social bummer. Afraid that I would be dancing with a stray dog on the street the next second, I immediately turned right and went into the disco bar next door and found a private room to sleep. After a deep sleep, I prepared to go back to school. A thin figure passed by me, and the fair and superior jawline and profile gradually overlapped with the Everett in my memory. With the alcohol buff. With tears in my eyes, I followed him into the dance floor and hugged his waist tightly with all my strength. The boy turned around in horror. Sister, please let me go. I stared at his face in confusion. Wanzi recognized the wrong person. I wanted to apologize sincerely, but my legs went weak and I knelt on the ground, and my hands took the opportunity to pull off his pants. The lights on the dance floor suddenly came on, and the people dancing wildly were forcibly separated by security. The crowd burst into panic. Go, 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 it seems like they are cracking down on pornography and illegal publications. I hurriedly pulled up the boy's pants. A pair of elegant black leather shoes suddenly appeared in front of me. His eyes were cold like a venomous snake. Emily, are you having fun? Oh. I put on heavy makeup to resemble a snake, and wore a nightclub princess-style halterback miniskirt, and met my former top luxury bootlicker. Think. No one would be too happy. At that moment, Nathan smiled dully. Long time no see, old friend. Because of this old friend, he said he would take me home, so I let my guard down and stepped into his car. It was not until I was thrown onto the big bed in the luxury hotel that I was shocked to smell a long-planned smell in the air. I tried to pull her miniskirt down to her knees. Nathan, don't be such a jerk. Where's your dignity? He half knelt on the bed with one leg, and there was an indescribable beauty under the loose bath towel. You said. Nathan's throat rolled. You are lonely, let me accompany you. I hurriedly explained. I am very happy now, I don't need your company. Look, I just took off the pants of a little puppy. I flew for 10 hours. Nathan said sarcastically with a subtle look in his eyes. I haven't even adjusted to the jet lag yet. Do you think I came back just to be with you? Suddenly, my action of pulling up my skirt to cover my legs seemed particularly pretentious, and I subconsciously thought that he would take 10 hours to come back to be with me just for a word from me. "Then you are busy." I spit on myself, thinking too much. "I'm leaving first." The next second, my arm was yanked hard and I fell into his arms. Nathan sneered and grabbed my jaw. "Why are you running? I came back just to sleep with you." I pulled out my cell phone. No signal. Emergency call to 110 failed. The door was locked tightly. I looked up and saw the lonely surveillance camera had been dismantled to its frame. Nathan looked at me calmly, as if he were looking at a little hamster ready to jump, but there was no desire in his eyes at all. In that case, I took off my skirt calmly while unbuttoning his suit. "Can we finish in half an hour? I want to go home and sleep quickly." Nathan pushed me away suddenly. His lips pursed tightly. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough, he was just angry and wanted me to coax him. I looked embarrassed. Usually, the little puppy is much more straightforward than you. He left without sleeping. Someone once said that if Nathan has a white moonlight in his heart, Emily's name must be engraved on it, but I don't deserve it. I would rather be the ugly scar in his heart. Nathan's eyes flashed with anger. "I don't care how many people you've had a crush on. Forget them now." He lifted me into his arms and walked towards the bed. I realized something was wrong and started punching and kicking, and finally picked up the exquisite celadone vase on the table. He said, "You can smash me to death, but I won't let you go." I held the vase, hating myself so much that I couldn't bring myself to do it. Afterwards, he was admitted to the hospital with a high fever, covered in bruises and scratches from being beaten. He held me tightly as the nurse examined him. The nurse glared at me and said, "Don't sleep next to the patient." I felt mixed emotions. I closed my eyes and pretended to be dead. For a long time, there was no one in the VIP ward. Nathan's voice came from the side. "I'm sorry, Emily, as long as I'm alive, I will never let you suffer any injustice." I closed my eyes stiffly and pretended not to hear. For the next 6 years, Nathan and I continued to date as a couple. I knew that sooner or later Nathan would hold the hand of some rich girl and walk down the aisle to get married, just like his parents. But I don't care anymore. When friends who have not seen each other for a long time see me again, they often say, "Emily, you are getting more willful every year." My bright and beautiful face was reflected on the bottle. I smiled and said, "Maybe. If a girl has someone to support her and take care of the aftermath, no matter how big a mess she has made or whether she is right or wrong, it is hard for her not to be willful." I always think of the day when Nathan tore up my speech. I went to my father's office and cried, but he gave me a stern lecture, saying it was no big deal and I could just bear it and it would pass. But in the past few years, I have lived freely and authentically. 8 years after we first met, Nathan went on a business trip to Turkey. We kissed passionately on a hot air balloon, and he suddenly said to me, "Let's get married." I curled my lips casually and said, "Okay." If I had taken seriously the lies a man told when he was in love, I would have lived for more than 20 years in vain. But he held an engagement party for me that made a sensation in the whole city. He took me to the celebrity circle and introduced me generously. "This is my future wife." He used force to make my family accept the fact that my future daughter-in-law was me. Over time, all concerns gradually disintegrated. I asked him anxiously, "Does your family know that I don't want to have a child?" "I know." Nathan frowned helplessly. "I can only promise them that I will train a successor who can protect the group, but I didn't promise that it will be my child." My heart felt like it had been hit hard by a punch. As my thoughts turned, I heard myself saying softly, "Actually, I don't hate kids that much." So sad. I ended up falling in love with someone who had bullied me. 2 months before the wedding. After Nathan went on a business trip to the United States, he cheated on me in front of me. He personally shielded Carol from the rain, and when he glanced at me with a cold eye, the piercing pain almost made me faint. The girlfriends were shocked. "He pursued you for 8 years, and after he got you, he cheated on you? That girl has been getting minor plastic surgery in recent years. How can someone get plastic surgery using a photo of their future sister-in-law? I'll tell you, men like those who are forever young." I touched my forehead, although it was embarrassing. He seems to have forgotten me. I held a press conference and made up a story about a perfect 8-year love affair that ended in cheating. I didn't want to use this as a hot topic to bring down his company. I just wanted to get in touch with him. Nathan is now like a flower on the ridge. He treats all my phone calls and WeChat messages as spam. It seems that his current view of me is just a disgusting, entangled, and poor ex-fiancé. 11. The trending searches flooded the Nathan Group stock market, and Nathan finally arranged a meeting with me. Unexpectedly, he brought his little lover with him. Carol glared at me through the half-dropped car window. Her face, which looked 100% like mine, was cute and innocent. She said to Nathan coquettishly, I think my legs are numb. I can't get up." Nathan bent down and picked the person up from the back seat. I stared at the scene in front of me with resentment. I endured it again and again. "Nathan, I can come out and clarify the trending search matter, but I need to discuss it." The little girl in his arms smiled maliciously at me and interrupted weakly. "Uncle, I just dreamed that you taught me how to play golf. We talked while playing golf. I think this sister won't mind, right?" I interrupted her. "I do mind." In order to avoid wasting this day with Carol, I promptly asked to go to the Western restaurant to talk for a few minutes and then leave. Nathan doesn't like to waste time. When he drove the car over, I subconsciously opened the door and sat in the passenger seat, but he pushed me open with one hand. That's right, I am now a vicious and scheming ex, and I am not worthy of sitting in his passenger seat. But I like to force people. I forcefully climbed onto his passenger seat and quickly hugged his waist. "I used to hug you like this all the time." He was stunned for a moment with a complicated expression and pushed me away again. Along the way, I talked a lot as Nathan reminisced about the past, from the time I gave him the wrong directions in high school to the morning 3 months ago when he pressed me against the door and kissed me. The little troublemaker's face in the rearview mirror became paler and paler, and his expression became evasive. Finally, I asked, "Nathan, do you remember?" Nathan didn't interrupt me for some reason, and his expression became more and more strange. "Thank you, Miss Emily, for caring about my and Tiantian's daily life." At that moment, I was struck by lightning. "You haven't had any brain damage, have you?" "No." Nathan looked straight ahead. "You are the one who should see the doctor." He didn't forget anything. It's just that my memories were replaced by the original Carol. I had trouble breathing and nearly fainted. In the Western restaurant, whether intentionally or unintentionally, Carol tried her best to show off to me how close Nathan was to her. "Uncle, eat this prawn. You usually like your steak medium rare." "Uncle, caviar is your favorite." Nathan didn't touch any of the dishes. Finally, Carol couldn't help but complain. "Just eat a bite." He has a high fever because he is allergic to shrimp. He doesn't like steak that is not well done. He is not interested in caviar. "Miss Carol, you don't have to pretend to know him well. After all, you haven't spent as much time with him as I have." One sentence made the atmosphere tense. Carol was stunned and said through gritted teeth, "Do you think his habits can't be changed?" I sneered. "Of course he will. He has fallen in love with you. It would be nice if he gets sick from eating lobster and dies." I looked at Nathan in a sarcastic tone, never expecting that one day I would say such sarcastic words. "That's enough." As the person involved, Nathan rubbed his brow helplessly. "Emily, let's negotiate some terms and clarify the trending search." "I don't want to negotiate." He slowly spat out a huge amount of money. Carol next to him was the first to scream. "It's too much. It's just a crappy trending search. This amount of money can buy tens of thousands of trending searches." I froze in place. Carol only knew that the amount was huge, but I knew that it was all the liquid cash Nathan could come up with. He spent all his liquid cash to get rid of me once and for all? I don't want money. My eyes were sore. "What happened to you in America?" Nathan was surprised and smiled sarcastically. "I don't like talking to you about anything other than money." The situation was at a stalemate for a while, and the waiter brought a glass of warm water. When Carol stood up, her high-heeled shoes stepped on my foot. The excruciating pain made me push her gently. The cup of water swayed and all the water fell onto the back of my hand. But at that moment, the scalding heat made me react quickly and grabbed her arm to block it. "Ah!" she screamed. Unexpectedly, my hand was held by someone. Nathan looked at the back of my hand, which was stained red. Finally, he shook it off and said, "You are so vicious. No one has ever explained why a cup of warm water becomes hot." Carol's arm was burned red, and she was rushed to the hospital. As a result, the doctor looked up at Nathan and said, "Sir, this lady is pregnant and cannot take medicine containing antibiotics." I shuddered slightly. A few years ago, when I was helping him organize his study, I found Nathan's medical record of sterilization surgery in the top shelf of the bookcase. "What kind of pregnancy is Carol pregnant with?" I reminded him. "Nathan, didn't you have a vasectomy?" Carol pointed at me and cried in Nathan's arms. "She is so vicious. She slandered me like this. You have recovered from the surgery. I hate her and never want to see her again." At that moment, my blood ran cold. "Nathan, are you serious with her?" He nodded slightly. "I don't have time to act with you." My face turned pale. "Very good. 11. This is not a game." When the deal fell through, Nathan destroyed my company. The problems of false evidence, slander, and tax evasion were like a pile of snowflakes that were growing bigger and bigger. He took a tough stance and not only wanted to bankrupt me, he also wanted to send me to jail. But he was the one who initially invested capital in this company and taught me how to manage it. He put in much more effort than I did, and now he wants to destroy it with his own hands. After holding on for a while, the company declared bankruptcy. In the empty conference room, I heard my own calm voice. "Find a lawyer to sue me so I don't have to go to jail." The calendar on the table clearly read December 9th, winter. I remember this day. 7 years ago on this day, Nathan blocked me at the staircase and gently touched my head. "Baby, do you know that I have a crush on you?" I huddled in the corner and said, I know. How dare you? Run away when you see me." He smiled with a strong sense of pressure. "Give me a kiss." He kissed me. I ran back to the dorm panting and wrote down in my diary, "I hate Nathan." Later, I crossed out Nathan and changed it to "I hate rudeness and disrespect." At that time, the girl who wrote this sentence while hiding in the quilt thought that the biggest joke in the world was falling in love with Nathan. Stupid and ridiculous. Later, when I was in my prime at the age of 20s, I walked around at banquets with my arm around his as his female companion, and gradually I tasted the flavor of a lifelong companionship. After 6 years of self-defeating, I was about to sink when Nathan put an end to this one-sided competition. 12. I was in debt of several million and had no other options, so I barged into a high society banquet, walked up to Nathan, who was dressed in a suit, and reminded him, "Mr. Nathan, the court will open in half a month." I took him to court for forgery and other charges. He continued to smile. "You don't want my huge breakup fee, but you want to send me to the police station?" I pursed my lips and said, "Yes." He lowered his eyebrows and said, "Then your love for me is really disgusting." Suddenly, the tone sounded familiar. When he turned around, I grabbed his hand in a hurry. "Wait." During the struggle, I pulled off a piece of his little finger, and an ugly red scar was revealed at the third joint of his little finger among his 5 white and slender fingers. I was stunned by the silicone-simulated severed finger in my hand. Nathan didn't care and pulled down the sleeves of his suit to cover his missing little finger. "If you like it, I'll give it to you." He was referring to a fake broken finger, as 3 months ago all 5 of his fingers were intact. I blurted out in surprise, "When did it break?" "Miss Emily, in what capacity are you questioning me?" He said calmly, "But no matter what your capacity is, I cannot tell you." Before the security guards pulled me away for intruding into the party, Nathan handed me a red invitation. "Welcome to my wedding." I gazed at the words happiness and marriage written on the exquisite invitation. "He's getting married." As if remembering something, he came back and said, "I'm asking you one last time, will you accept the huge breakup fee?" I laughed angrily. "I will put it in my account. People cannot make the same mistake again and again." He wants to send me to prison, but I don't give him a chance to take revenge on him. I don't know what's good for me. Nathan's eyebrows relaxed as if he had accomplished something. "It's a pleasure to work with you." 14. Few days later, I attended the court as the plaintiff, but Nathan did not come. Faced with strong evidence, his lawyer was gradually finding it difficult to defend his case, but the judge's confused attitude gave me a bad feeling. Sure enough, the situation changed and a decision was made not to file the case. When I left the court with a livid face, the lawyer beside me reminded me, "They are in the same group. They are in collusion with money and power. Miss Emily should either find Nathan and resolve it privately." I laughed. Solve it privately? If I'm innocent, he must be guilty. He had pushed the situation to a point where it was beyond redemption, and I was forced to turn against him in order to protect myself. "But you're pregnant." The lawyer tried to convince me. I believe no man would let his child suffer. I chuckled and shook my head. This child is not his only child. I found out I was pregnant not long ago, but due to long-term endocrine disorders, I didn't pay much attention to the changes in my body. I didn't get tested until Carol became pregnant. I walked out of the court wrapped in a heavy windbreaker. "Is there any other way?" "The procuratorate," the lawyer sighed. "But if the Supreme Procuratorate and the court are in cahoots, there's nothing that can be done to save the situation." 15. The people at the procuratorate rejected my request, and that afternoon I was hospitalized due to a fit of rage. Obstetrics clinic. The doctor told me sternly, "In your case, you need to preserve the fetus." Countless scenes flashed through my mind, and finally I pulled out the 4-2. No need. In the hospital, life seems particularly fragile. Suddenly, a huge noise and heat wave hit, and the flames licked the inpatient department savagely. Amidst the deafening noise, the emergency room across the street exploded. The fire spread from downstairs. Thick smoke blocked the passage. People rushed out like ants, but retreated step by step when they were licked by the flames. There is no way to escape. Everyone frantically picked up their phones to call for help. I paused, opened the address book, and pressed the number marked Dear. 8 years ago, he shamelessly added a note to himself, but I have never changed it. The call was connected. I tried to remain calm. "I love you, even though this Nathan is not him." "What?" "I wish you a quick death," he said in a playful tone. "Why do you have to pick my wedding day to say this?" "It turns out he is getting married today." I chuckled. "Happy wedding." I hung up the phone, the sirens rang, and I covered my mouth and nose with a wet quilt and walked towards the emergency exit. The crowd looked terrified. "Isn't she afraid of death? Don't go, wait for rescue. Let her lead the way." I rushed into the passage with dim flames, carefully avoided obstacles, and walked a distance before reminding the people upstairs, "It's safe, come down quickly." The people behind followed closely. A lot of flammable materials collapsed at the exit, and the fire got bigger. I paused, and in the firelight, a group of people rushed in from the corner. The leader was wearing a blue uniform. His suit pants were neatly ironed, and he was tall and thin. The faint sense of alienation in his raised brows suddenly stopped. "Go up." "Yes, congratulations." "Etienne Everett." Suddenly a girl rushed out from behind me and hugged his waist. "Everett, I knew you would come." He frowned and said, "I'm working, not looking for you." After looking away, his eyes fell on me. "Long time no see, Everett." 16. This fire was intentional. The hospital director was dismissed for dereliction of duty and perished along with the hospital in despair. Everett, as the prosecutor of the Supreme People's Prosecutor's Office, personally arrested him. After Everett finished his work, I followed him closely. The scene seemed familiar. I remember it snowed one year when I was about 16 years old. I followed him, and when I was caught I stammered, "What a coincidence, I also took this route home." "But your house is in the opposite direction." "How do you know?" The boy's face turned pale as he was seen by the snow. "Like you, I followed him." I smiled and laughed. The feelings of youth are always poetic. Now he is just the prosecutor and I need his help. Your case is too complicated to explain in one go. I'll analyze it with you on the way. Everett took a breath and changed the subject. "Emily, did you get together with him because you thought I was dead? Or?"
"No."
I looked Everett straight in the eye. "I like him." It was not until today that I learned what happened that year. Everett was transferred by the country to manage a secret organization and was recently sent back due to work-related injuries. He suddenly smiled and said, "Let's talk about the case." In the distance, a grumpy Bentley was following behind, and finally, the owner honked the horn impatiently. The familiar license plate made me laugh. He is sick, don't bother with him." Sure enough, within 2 minutes, Nathan stepped out of the Bentley with red eyes, like the prelude to a storm. I was afraid that things would get complicated. I could only wave to Everett and said, "Goodbye, Everett." Then he turned and walked towards Bentley. Nathan had a sarcastic look on his face, but when I threw him into my arms, his body subconsciously froze. I buried myself in his broad chest and whispered, "Please don't push me away. Please make me look happier, so that the boy I once loved so much can leave in peace." In the car, "Stay away from him or I'll kill him." Nathan pulled out a pink-wrapped candy from his wallet and peeled it open. He had been eating this kind of candy since high school. A familiar feeling came over me. I was stunned. You are back? Heh." He glared at me coldly. "Wake up, he will never come back. Do you think I'm jealous? I'm just fulfilling the spirit of the contract." I felt like I was struck by lightning. 17. There are 2 people living inside Nathan's body. One loves Emily dearly, the other is completely detached from her. But he never told me that a few days ago, I accidentally accessed his confidential document box, which contained records of this strange disease. In addition to company secrets, he would save a letter to me every year. "Emily, I'm afraid I'll leave you one day. If I ever hurt you, it won't be me. I will always stand behind you." Every 3 months, he has to go to the United States for treatment and take medication, and last time, Nathan sensed something and rushed back to the United States for treatment overnight. But the devil still broke out of the shell. Another consciousness in his body took over Nathan's body. That is to say, I appreciate the one who is torturing me. His parents are cold and indifferent, his lover has someone else in his heart, but he is stupid enough to think he needs these emotions. Nathan threw the peeled candy out of the window. "I don't need these things. I watched him use my body to show weakness to you, but in return I got your endless cold stare. I wanted to kill this idiot so much. I also wanted to kill you, Emily. He died without waiting for a word of love from you." My face turned pale. "You hate me, why do you want to hurt yourself?" The dark red scar on Nathan's little finger was dangling and looked hideous. 17. "Because I wanted to kill you, my weak link, to prevent future troubles." He laughed horribly. "But that idiot actually wanted to kill me first." He stretched out his 5 bony fingers, took off his prosthesis and moved his fingers. "Of course he will feel pain, but unless he leaves of his own accord, we will have to share the same body." I felt cold all over. This demon is going to give me all his liquid cash. I remembered that he hated me to death, but he didn't want to kill me. He left voluntarily. "What was your promise to him?" "I will always protect you." Nathan stroked his forehead. "This is too difficult for me, so I plan to send you to prison so that no one will bully you." I pulled the corner of my mouth. "No, I don't need you to protect me forever." Nathan wrote in his article that no matter what happens, another consciousness will feel the same way. I laughed at him. "I just went to see Everett and you're so angry. Would you really be happy if I went to jail?" The figure next to him froze. "I will leave you so you won't have any soft spots anymore. Let me go, okay?" 18. The next day, Nathan sent someone to deliver a red velvet box. The assistant told me, "I hope Miss Emily will keep her promise and leave this place." I slowly opened the box and smiled. "Thank you." A small piece of broken finger bone. Emily lay quietly in the box. The moment the door was closed, I burst into tears. "I love you, Nathan. Oh, by the way, I'm pregnant. I'll be waiting for you to come back."